Well, international sanctions have done little to deter North Korea's efforts to become a nuclear-armed state. Now, let's take a closer look. 10 years ago, they carried out their first underground nuclear explosion. Pyongyang called it an historic event. The second test was bigger. That came in 2009. It created a 4.7 magnitude earthquake. In 2011, Kim Jong-un assumed power following the death of his father. 2 years later, the third device was detonated. This time, a 5.1 earthquake was recorded. It prompted the UN to impose further sanctions on the isolated nation. In January, Pyongyang said it had tested a hydrogen bomb. It was condemned by the UN Security Council and led to punitive measures being imposed. Well, Hahm is in Seoul, joins us now with more on this. Shane, what exactly do we know then about this test and what North Korea is trying to achieve?
Well, officials are still determining what sort of underground nuclear test this was. You mentioned the claim of an H-bomb test back in January. Previous tests have either been plutonium or highly enriched uranium sort of tests. But what we do know, according to the South Korean military, is that this recent test was estimated at about 10 kilotons. And that is much more powerful than the January test, which was estimated at about 4 to 6 kilotons. So this troubling trend of not only this more frequent nuclear testing, but more powerful nuclear testing has drawn grave outright condemnation from the international community. Also, this latest purported test came at the same area as North Korea's known nuclear test site in Punggye-ri. It's in the northeastern part of the country. So not only the frequency, but also the power increasing in this test, and its claim to have miniaturized this nuclear warhead. Many international experts have worried that that was a last step in terms of being a direct threat to other countries outside the Asia region. And if these claims are true, then you would expect much more condemnation from the international community.
So has there been a unified response from the international community? And what's likely to happen next?
Well,
because the sanctions so far, they haven't been much of a deterrent, have they?
You're exactly right. What we do know is that on Friday, local time in New York, the United Nations Security Council will convene an emergency meeting. That was at the request of South Korea, the United States, and Japan. But we've also seen condemnation from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who are meeting in Geneva to talk Syrian peace talks. They both showed concern over this latest test by North Korea. Also, China's foreign ministry issuing a statement, and they are also reportedly going to lodge a formal diplomatic protest. We had a very swift response here in South Korea. South Korean President Park Geun-hye is cutting short her trip to Southeast Asia to return. And she also spoke unprecedentedly, very quickly with U.S. President Barack Obama over the phone earlier this morning to talk countermeasures to this latest threat. So what we've seen in the past are toughening of sanctions through the UN Security Council. And what we'll see most likely is possibly covering these loopholes in the most recent sanctions back in March in UN Security Council Resolution 2270.
Okay, Shane, thank you.